Jamie here. Welcome to Satellite Stories, where we interview those who have encountered Jesus through video games and nerd culture. We're a part of the LTN Podcast Network, and today we're going to hear another story.
Hey, friends of Satellite Stories, it is great to be with you once again. Today I'm going to be hanging out with Brendan O'Brien from Slingshot Esports, and man, I love this guy so much. He is a parent, a minister of the gospel, and I really believe that he's going to stir some hearts today, that what we hear from him is going to give us a fresh perspective. He's got some great stories to share, got some great experience as a parent, and I hope you are enlightened. Enjoy, friends. Hey, Brendan, so good to be on the podcast with you. Thank you so much for taking some time to hang out with me. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited. How long have we been doing this together? I think of like Orlando of 20, was it 21?
Yeah, that's where I first met you.
Yeah, Orlando 21. We're coming up on 3 years. 3 years, man.
Unbelievable.
I feel like that's still like the early dating stages, right? Like, yeah, dude, that's cool. That's cool. Well, Brendan, I'm so glad to have you here. You know, I told you a little bit about what we do, and the whole point of this podcast is to build a library of stories from satellite gaming and beyond. And these stories, they help gamers be affirmed in how to use video games for the gospel. It helps pastors and ministers of the gospel see a new way, maybe a different way of doing ministry that seems a little non-traditional. And then, of course, to help people that maybe are not gamers. Maybe we got a couple grandmas out there that listen every now and then. Maybe we got some skeptical like teachers in public schools, and I love it. But my hope is that they can come here and they can say, you know, I may not understand or even like video games, but it's really cool to know that the gospel is being shared. So, Brendan, you're here with Slingshot Esports. Just tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about Slingshot. Who are we listening to today? Who are we talking to?
Yeah, so Brendan O'Brien. I'm over here on the East Coast. I'm about an hour north of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in a little town called Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Actually? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yep,
Nice.
Actually Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Yep.
All right.
This past August, my wife and I, we celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. She gets the medal for putting up with me for that long. We've got 2 kids. Our oldest is our daughter. She is 28, I believe, and she's married. She lives about 2 hours south of us. And our son, he's our youngest. He is 25. He's married as well, and he lives in Florida on the Gulf Coast. So we don't get to see him very often, but when we do, it's like we get to live in paradise for a little bit.
That's so cool.
So,
do you guys usually go see him then? He doesn't come back to Pennsylvania?
yeah, usually we visit him.
Okay.
We have a little bit more freedom than he does, but it's okay. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it's fun as we were getting ready to record, you know, just kind of talking, like finding a pocket. There's a lot of stuff about you that I still don't know, particularly with your story, and that always excites me. So, Slingshot Esports, what is that? What's like your one-liner? How would you explain like Slingshot Esports to somebody that maybe has some understanding that video games can be used for the gospel, but like, what do you do?
All right, so I'll give it to you. We help gaming kids build positive relationships that are rooted in Christian values and ethics through a safe haven gaming community so that they can grow socially and spiritually while doing what they love instead of playing in isolation and in heavy toxic environments.
So creating that safe space. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. That's a good mouthful, man.
Yep.
And what is that like? Paint a picture for me. Like I walk into like, is it a physical space, digital space? Like explain to me the environment.
Yeah, so we have 3 spaces. Online, we have our online Discord, and we do a bunch of things through Discord. We have our in-person gaming center located here in Allentown, so it's about half an hour, about 20 minutes away from me. And then we do what we call mobile events. So we'll partner with local churches and do outreach gaming events for them, for their youth group, for their missions group, whatever. they'd like to make an impact within the gaming community.
That's rad, man. I love it. I love it. There's a lot of for those that are familiar with satellite gaming, there's a lot of just similarities. We see ourselves, I would say we see ourselves kind of like siblings in the ministry world. And Brandon and I, we work together through Go Game, which is some global stuff that we do. And I have dogs. They're not gamers, but they like to join in on the podcast. And my working space is a little different. Like I've been telling people on the podcast that, so I just kind of start to zone out noises. So that's probably the only time I'll mention anything crazy, but like I have noise cancellation headphones on. So if Brendan, do me a favor, if you hear like it sounds like someone's dying, Jamie, let me know, because you'll probably hear it through the mic before I hear it. Does that sound good? Yeah.
That's
Okay.
totally fair.
Okay.
That's totally
Cool.
fair.
So we've been doing stuff with Go Game together for again since like 21. And what's cool about that is like that's a way that we can, like, yes, bring in our ministry models into the mix, but also just show up as like Jamie and Brendan, like brothers in Christ, and just do really cool stuff with people around the world. So I've enjoyed our journey. I've enjoyed our friendship. And now what I'd like to do, Brendan, I'd like to share your story. I think your story will speak to maybe, again, ministers of the gospel that want to see how it's used. But I think particularly to maybe parents, family members of gamers who like don't get it. And I think it's okay that they don't get it. They need to have the freedom to be like, it's okay if you don't get it. But my hope is your story will maybe give them some ideas on maybe not what they ought to do, because not everyone has to do the same thing, but it might give them a fresh perspective on like how to see gamers and maybe even relate to them. So Brendan, there's a few key spots in your story. I think, how Slingshot Esports got started. There was a moment where your eyes were open. So why don't we rewind all the way back to like, you're not an empty nester. You've got kids in the house. You're trying to sleep at night. What does life look like for you with young gamers in the house, man?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. We look back on it fondly now, but when our son was late high school, early college, it was a challenge, because he'd start playing 10, 11 o'clock at night, and my wife and I are trying to go to bed. He's having a blast, and we just want to be quiet. He just wanted to be quiet. So I would go down to his room, and I just ask him to be quiet, and he would, and it'd be good for that night. And the next night, same thing. Next night, same thing. So it was wash, rinse, repeat, and it was hard, and it was a challenge. And I wanted to show him how serious I was. So I would do things like pull the cord to his monitor so he couldn't see what was going on. I thought that would work. Well, that didn't. So I ratcheted up a little. So I pulled the cord to his PS4. Well, that didn't work. In fact, all that did was create tension and friction in our house, and just wasn't good. So there was this one day, this one Saturday, I was just sitting and I heard him playing. So I decided that it'd be a good thing to go up and see what was going on. And I think the Lord prompted me to do that. Like, I think that was a significant moment, because I walked into his room and I just stood behind his monitor until he motioned me to come around. And I just asked, what are you doing? And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is such a waste of my time. But
had you played video games up to this point? Like, what was your experience playing?
Oh yeah. Like, I played as a kid. I played through high school. I played through college. In fact, when the kids were younger, we'd play together. Like, all four of us. We'd play racing games, because my wife can go forward, backward, left, right. That's about all she can do. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, tell you what though, if you put my wife on a dirt track with a WRX, like, she'll put dirt in your eyes the whole game, and you'll never cross the finish line first.
That's amazing.
But anyhow.
So there I just wanted to get some context. You had played games before, but now it's a new thing, because now you're a parent who's like watching and listening to this kid while you're trying to sleep. It just gives it a new lens. So eventually he motions you to come around. You say, "What are you doing? What happens now?" So I wanted to bring in some context.
No, it was perfectly fine. Yeah, so he's like, "We played this game, Rocket League." I'm like, "Well, what is Rocket League?" He's like, "It's remote control cars playing soccer." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, how does it work?" He said, "I'll show you." Puts his headset back on and hops in a match with two of his buddies. So they're playing 3v3. And I saw the clock, like it's 5 minutes. I said to myself, "Thank you, Jesus. It's only 5 minutes. I have to endure this." But I was blown away just watching because he's got his headset on, and this was before Discord was integrated into Rocket League. So he had his phone on his chest so he could talk to one of his friends. Another friend was on the same platform, so it was also
Doing whatever it takes.
He's doing all this stuff, and I was blown away. I heard sportsmanship. I heard character. I heard integrity. I heard him managing his team in a way that would help them win, but also was kind, loving, supportive. Like, it was amazing, and it was the most incredible 5 minutes I've had up until that point. Watching him demonstrate all of those things that my wife and I had wanted to see. Like, we knew they were there, but the game brought it out of him, and it was cool. It was so cool. So after he was done, he put his headset down, and I just started asking questions. I spent the next half an hour just peppering with question after question after question. And we talked about the pros. We talked about viewership. We talked about the money. We talked about the tournaments. We talked about so much. And I learned a lot. And I think at that point, he understood that I cared about him. Like, it really broke down some barriers. And so then I was like, well, tell me about these tournaments. He's like, okay. I was like, can anybody run a tournament? He's like, yeah. I said, wait. So we could run a tournament. And he's like, oh, yeah. So wait, so we could run a tournament. Can we stop before the championship game and talk about Jesus? He's like, yeah. I said, okay, so we can run a tournament, stop before the championship game, talk about Jesus, and then play that final game. We could do this. He's like, yeah. And before I got the next thing out, Jamie, he said, my friend Seth can help with this, my friend John can help with this, and my friend Kevin can help with this. And he just laid it all out. Like,
that's so cool.
So as a family, we have done physical sports ministry for years. So he understood all of us do, understand using a sport as a platform to share the gospel. And he made the switch real fast that you can go from a soccer ball to Rocket League to share the gospel. Like, it was, to him, it made sense, right? You could do it. So that's when this crazy idea of like, wait, we can use video games to talk about Jesus? Yeah, bless you. Like,
Thank you. I tried to hide it,
That's okay. Yeah. Like, we can do this. We can do this. And so that became that started the path. That started the journey on getting into the video game space for this.
Dude, I love that. And I'm going to ask a segue story, and then we'll come back and we'll revisit all of this or most of it. But there was another story that you shared. I think it was after this where, okay, so now you see it happening digitally, but I think there was a moment for you where it clicked that like, this is more than just like an online thing. This is like when people, this is a personal pet peeve, and I don't mean this in a mean way. I think people don't know what they don't know, but when they say like, oh, but it's not a real relationship. No, online relationships are real relationships. I would say that like there is something missing. Like when Brendan and I get to be in the same room, oh man, it's special. Like I love it. I love hugging you. I love talking to you. I love like that we all like jump in the jacuzzi at the hotel and we just talk for, till they kick us out. Like I love that stuff. So don't hear me say that like we don't need in-person stuff, but I think when we say that like, oh, it's not a real relationship if it's online, like I think you saw like, no, that was real. That was real interaction. That was real teamwork. But there was a moment that you share when you realize like, oh, this is in person too. This isn't just online. So maybe I'm speaking for you on how you felt at the time, but you have a cool story that is a segue. So go ahead and share that a little bit. What happened at that moment?
Yeah, I was, prior to all this, I was one of those parents who just thought video games rod your brain. Like, I thought they were fun for a little bit, but to significantly spend any time, like, it was a waste of time. And I spent a little bit of time understanding Rocket League and getting into Rocket League and all of those kinds of things, but yet still didn't have a real grasp on how we were going to enter into this space, right? How are we going to make a difference? And so I'm sitting in the living room one day, just minding my own business, and our son comes down. He comes down the steps from his room, and under one arm is his monitor, and under the other arm is his PS4, and in one hand is all of his controllers, and the other hand is all his cables. And he's just, making his way down the steps across the living room, and he's almost about out the door. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing? Where are you going? Like, part of me thinking, like, are you moving out? Or like, what's going on? And he's like, no, I'm gonna go play with my friend Kevin. And I'm like, Kevin? Oh, why are you, like, Kevin lives like a mile away. Like, why are you going to Kevin's? Like, you play with him every single night. Bro, I know it because I hear it. And he's like, I'll never forget this, Jamie. I'll never forget. He said, because it's more fun when we play together.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I think I said some dad things. I don't remember exactly what I said because this is just spinning in my mind. And I think he left. I think he shut the door. And I'm just like, oh,
For him, it's like just another night with the boys, but you're over here like, what just happened?
What? Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, and so what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for a video game ministry or an opportunity, or how do you use that to share the gospel? Oh, wait, like what if we would have a bunch of in-person events, right? So if the gamers can take their stuff out of their room, right? Well, why can't they all bring it to a central location, right?
Yeah.
And why can't I meet them there and have some basic infrastructure things, have a LAN set up, a local area network where we're running the internet through cables for them, so we don't have to depend on Wi-Fi. Like, why can't I just do that and then play, have fun, and then we'll talk about Jesus, give them some snacks, and send them home, and just would that work? Would that crazy idea work?
That's so cool, man.
I think it does.
So I was gonna say, so did it? Yeah, and that to me is like that spark. I think for a lot of people, and I hope that for people that have tuned in to the podcast, it's like they have moments where they're like, oh, that's it. It's something that clicks. And I think this is where for people whose life and whose calling is this field of ministry, that spark just ignites a fire that then ignites another fire and continues, right? So that spark for you was a moment where, as a father, you're like, oh, I get it a little bit more. And that's what we're hoping. But for you, it was, and hopefully for the ministers here that are listening, they go, oh, this is actually something we can use, right? So for a parent, it's like, I understand now a little bit more. But for some, it might change the trajectory of how you do ministry, of how you see ministry, of how you build ministry. And for you, obviously these stories are part of the origin story of Slingshot Esports. So let me ask this, fast forwarding now to like here you are. How many years ago were those two stories?
That was January of 2020.
Okay. So like four and a half years ago, almost 5 years ago now, I guess. Yeah. And so fast forward this 5 years, how have those moments influenced the way that you build things, the way you run, your methodology, like what you do day to day? How have these stories actually impacted the way you walk out your door, the way you interact with people online?
I have to tell you, the first couple of I don't know, half of a year we were doing this, it was stressful. It was hard because people didn't understand it, and I could relate because I was there, Jamie. Like, I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. It was stupid until I had that moment when it was like, okay, God revealed to me like I was missing something, right? And a big piece of that was humility. Once I was able to get that humility piece, like then he was able to show me you can do some really cool things. And so having a foot in both worlds, like I understood the gaming world, but I also I understood the Gen X and the Boomer. Like I understood that world too, because it wasn't that long that I was there. And so just trying to figure out like, how do you really do this? So I was fortunate to connect with a couple of entrepreneurial-minded pastors, some church planters, and seeded the idea, hey, let's have an outreach event for your youth, but let's use video games.
Yeah.
And it latched on. There were some who were like, yeah, let's do it. And so in 2021, we started doing it. And there are some pastors that still, even even in this year in 2024, we've had a couple events at their churches or with them in partnership one way or another. So it's grown into having our own gaming center where we've got 15 PCs, 17 PCs, 2 with driving sims, simulation wheels. We've got 3 Xboxes, 3 PS4s, and I think we've got 4 Switches. And
That's
so we
so
hold
cool.
a bunch of different events based upon, different demographics, right? So certain people play Minecraft, but certain people won't play Rocket League, and vice versa. So
Yeah.
we try to have a diverse range of events where we play, have fun, and at some level, somehow, we always talk about Jesus.
That's so cool, man.
We just had a Fortnite event, and now this podcast being recorded around Halloween, right?
Hmm.
We talked about Fortnitemares, and we talked about living dead, undead, and then in Romans 6:11, how it talks about being dead to sin but alive to Christ. So how
Yeah,
can we
amen.
be undead, right? How can Christians be undead, right? All that
Yeah.
kind of, or dead to sin and things like that. So we use the game as an opportunity to talk about Jesus in one way, shape, or another.
Yeah. It's fun having different people in different ministries come onto the podcast. I tell these stories often of like sharing the gospel with a student for years and years and years and years. And then we go to a camp and then this speaker like from out of town that nobody knows says something and the student hears it and they just go, I want to give my life to Jesus. And I'm like, bro, I've been telling you that same stuff for like 5 years. This guy comes out and like just randomly says like, oh, Jesus loves you. And it's like, it hits you like it never does before. And he gives his life to Jesus. And I'm like, well, if that ain't proof that it's the Lord's timing, it's not mine, then I don't know what is. But I think it's interesting how my hope is the same thing happens with this podcast. Like it's one thing for me to talk to somebody about video game industry and why I think it's impactful, but it's another thing to have you on here, to have Hernandez from Brazil, to have Russ in Colorado Springs, to have David who lives down the road but has a different perspective than me. Like, I think it's really cool to be able to hear different perspectives and different stories and different angles of video game industry. So people say like, this is a really dynamic thing. It's not just playing video games, talking to kids, pray for them. Like those are, even if that's all it was, it would be amazing, but it's so much more diverse than that. Like in the same way that like church is different all around the world. And although there's an American church model, every church you go into is a little different. Gaming ministry is just the same, man. Like we're not all doing the same thing just mindlessly. Like we're very purposeful and thoughtful about like, man, how can we lead these kids to Jesus and not just students, right? For us, I think we both do focus primarily on youth, but like we rub shoulders with a lot of adults that also care deeply about this. So, Brandon, if I would say, if I think the perspective that you bring that a lot of other people that have been on the podcast may not quite be able to bring, but that is the perspective of a parent. So as a parent, man, if there was just like one nugget that you could pass on to other parents, as someone who does gaming ministry, but as someone who has also been a frustrated parent, like one piece of advice, maybe it's something you already said, maybe it's something fresh, whatever, what would that be?
You can't pause online games.
Oh, yeah, that's the advice you want to give them. Yeah. What do they do with that though? What do they do with that? Because I love that. I know what that means. What does that mean to them?
No, I think the biggest piece, Jamie, is humility. I think that's the biggest piece. Like the humble yourself to understand that they're doing it because they enjoy it. They're doing it because it's fun. They love it. And so when you humble yourself and you enter into that world and you ask them to teach you, to show you, to play for you, it changes your relationship. It changes. Like I grew up in a very athletic family, right? We played basketball, we played soccer, we did all these kind of great sports. I even played lacrosse, and it was so much fun. And when I would get on the court or on the field, I would look up to the stands, and I'd always try to find my parents. I'd look for them. And when I saw them, like everything was going to be okay, right? There's anticipation, there's the excitement, but then there's the comfort.
Yeah.
But the gaming kids who aren't athletes don't have anybody rooting and cheering for them. So when a parent is behind the kid, at least just watching them build in Minecraft, or at least watching them play in Rocket League, or even running around like a goofball in Fortnite, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the parent is there showing support, like that's huge. That's just huge to the kid. That kid wants to be seen. They want to be cared for. And with the parent over the shoulder like that, you're sending the message that I care about you. What you're doing is important to me, and I want to be there while you're doing it.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that, and I think the metaphors of sport are always super convenient, but I hope people don't hear, because I say them a lot. It's not just convenient. It translates. Like it translates. You sit on your, like, I remember when I was young, my mom was amazing. She would come down to my room every single night and she'd say, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? And she'd usually like bring me a snack, or like, as I got older, she'd like bring my dinner down, or like Taco Bell or something. You know what I mean? Like, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? And when I was real little, I always had something to talk about. And as a teenager, it was like maybe once a week, and it was usually like more heavy stuff. But there was a lot of times I'd just play my game and she'd just like I'd sleep on a futon, she'd sit on my futon and just talk to me. And, it was good. It was good. She was just there. She was present. So I don't just say it because it's convenient to make a correlation between sport and video games. I say it because it's real. And as someone who played sports also, and had parents that were very supportive of my game. I played games with my dad. My dad and I played Minecraft for like 3 hours the other day. The first time we played games in a while, but it was a good time. So I appreciate that. And then maybe one last nugget is, what about for pastors, maybe ministers of the gospel who are either dabbling with video game ministry, or what's something that you could put in front of them to help them maybe get it just a little bit more?
Yeah, it's a legit strategy. It is a legit strategy to be able to reach today's youth. They're going to play. The majority of them play, whether it's on a console or whether it's on their phone or whatever, they're playing. So why not use it? Why not make it a tool and say, okay, you're going to do it? Well, let's do it together. And let's create a relationship. Let's build something together through something that's important to you. And one other thing too, like for the youth pastors and the youth leaders who've got the fringe kids on the wall who don't play dodgeball because they're afraid they're going to get hit in the head, or they can't catch and chew gum at the same time, like these kids still have meaning. They still have value. They're still creating God's image, and they need to have a space too where they're loved, where they're seen, where they're understood. And somebody speaks their language, and there's a whole group of kids who want to be seen, want to be heard. In fact, they want a relationship, but they don't kick a ball, they don't throw a ball, they don't do that. But they will play a game, and man, they're good at it. Yeah. So get in there, enjoy it. You might not understand it, but you understand kids, right? And so once you start understanding a little bit about the game, then you'll know when to be happy. You'll know when to be sad. You might not know all the terms, but you'll know when to root and cheer, and when pat them on the back. You'll do better next time, and you'll make just as a strong impact with them as you would any other kid.
I love that, man. That's gold, Brendan. I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate the angle that you bring. Again, I think that like, because we do ministry in a lot of ways side by side, it is interesting to like, oh, you're on your 30th wedding anniversary. I'm on my 10th. You know what I mean? Like I'm coming up on 10, and to me, it's humbling to me. And I want to say I appreciate that somebody who is not my age can step into this world and say like, man, I got to do something about this. And so I'm humbled that you find a place amongst youth, amongst somebody who's, I don't know, got a lot more to learn about life, and you've lived a lot of life, and you see this as worth your time. And that's really special to me, because I see it as worth my time. So thank you for stepping into this world. Brendan, I think we're going to call it here, man. And I just want to say, man, I love you so much, and I love what you're doing with youth. And I hope that something that people heard today would inspire them and move them to take this more serious and understand that it's not just something that young people see and we're just dorking around. It's real, and it means something. So on our way out, is there any last words that you'd like to say to anybody that's popping in listening?
Can I just tell you one more story?
Oh, bro. Land the plane, buddy. Land the plane. Let's do it.
All right. So we had a Minecraft event, and an 8-year-old boy comes up to me and he says, "Hey, I've got an idea." And I said, "What's your idea?" He
An
says, "We
8-year-old?
should." 8-year-old.
Okay.
He says, "We should do a Roblox event." And I'm like, "What in the world is Roblox?" I'm like, "I have no idea." He's like, "Oh, it's this really fun game, and in Roblox we can play this thing, Flag Wars, and Flag Wars is awesome. It's just great." And I'm like, I have no idea what this boy's talking about. So I said, "All right, this is what you need to do. Give me an idea of what the event will look like, and I will help you build it." Okay. So he goes home, the event's over like this, and I thought that was the end of it. A year later, his mom, this is great. His mom sets up a video conference with him and me. And so he says, "I know what we're going to do." And so he lays out for me, Jamie, step by step by step of what a Roblox Flag Wars event would look like. He's got it all. And I'm like, this is nuts. All right. So I was like, "All right, thank you." So I took all that information, and about 4 months later, we held our very first Roblox Flag Wars event. And we had adults and we had kids. It was a blast. And at the end of the event, we had adults versus kids. Like they would get into the game, and the adults would play against the kids. And we had some adults who had no clue. Like they couldn't even hold the controller.
The 9-year-olds won, didn't they?
It was tied.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. A couple of gamers who knew what they were doing. But Jamie, just because I'm this old doesn't mean that there's all the wisdom in the world, right? So I tell you that story because like we rely upon those who are in it to tell us where we can make a difference, right? So I have a 9-year-old giving me directions. I've got a 21-year-old who sits on our board of directors, and it's just like, yeah, you got to stay connected with the people who are there and live in it, and it gives you the opportunity to be able to be relevant in a time when it's important to connect with youth and young adults and even the little kids.
Amen. Brandon, I love that, man. That is a beautiful story. And I think I'll say that it's an example of the humility that you're talking about. And I think that is a lesson that can translate not just in video game industry, but in anything. Like, let's not look down on them because of their youth, man. So, Brandon, once again, much love, brother. That's a great way to land it. Hey, everyone listening, thank you so much for hanging out. Brandon, go ahead and say goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Love y'all.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us as we grow the library of satellite stories. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, Jesus loves you, nerds.